booger face, let me tell you. Let me spin you a programmer's yarn. A programmer's string, as it were.
Nice.
You've been working on Square now for quite a while, all right? And you're like, Joseph was right, and I kept forgetting to do it. Let me implement an internal game node that acts as a hitbox, and it works. And you're like, wow, this is incredible. It works so well. It's so good. And then you try to go up to the second level of Square, and there's now double the number of nodes on the screen. And you're like, that's interesting. It's working a little bit slower now. And then you get to the third level, and suddenly it is really chugging. And you're like, that's very unfortunate, because I think I have a problem. So that's where I'm at with Square, is I think I have a problem where as you move up in levels, the effectiveness of the game nodes isn't where it's not the effectiveness, the
efficiency.
ability from I don't know if it's an efficiency thing or it just like it starts to really chug where it is like it looks like stutter, like you can feel the stutter, which I really didn't want. So I don't know. I think that I'm gonna put up what I have for review though, and then maybe we should talk about what's going on there, because that is unfortunate. I'm really close.
So you're saying that the collision detection that's built into home games is too slow for your needs for Square?
So this is kind of like what I'm thinking right now. I'm thinking that okay, let me backtrack. I think there's a couple of things that I know ahead of time that I want to do before I put this out for review. The first thing I want to do is leverage the collision detector's filter function. I want to pass in a filter function for it. And the reason for that is I think it's going through all of the elements and checking when really I only need to check for hitboxes. So that's one. That's fine, right? I need to address that problem. So adding a filter means that before it really does actual detection, it would just filter down only the hitboxes. That should speed stuff up pretty significantly. That's number one. Number two, I think I need to add a heuristic check of is anything even in the row, the same row as this node? As an NPC, a non-player node, the ones that just move across on their zone. Is there a player in this row? If no, don't even check for collisions. There's no collision that's going to happen. You're fine. And I think that those two things in concert might pull down the total number of times that I'm looping through basically every node in the game. And so I think those two things together I want to do, and then I want to put this out as a pull request, and so I want you to take a look at it and experience it with me, and then kind of we can think deeply about why it's chugging if it's still chugging. But yeah, so those are two tools that I haven't implemented yet, mostly because I only thought about them today. So, yeah, I don't know, man. What are your thoughts?
One of the things I can think of is, so basically the problem that you're running into is that our collision detection will look at the thing that you're looking at, which is the way it works is basically, I have this one thing, give me the list of everything in the game that I would run into basically at this position. And it's a very simple thing. It just goes through every single node and it does math, checking the boundaries and stuff. But I think, like you said, adding a filter would make it a little bit faster, remove a lot of the unnecessary stuff to check. But I think another simple one would be just a simple check of if the center point of this thing that I'm going to look at and its size are not even comparable to where I'm at on the board, which is same thing as what you said, if it's in the same row, basically a quick optimized filter to get rid of everything that we know is not intersecting, I think would optimize that kind of in a good general sense, and maybe you can do more optimizations with your own filter function and stuff. But yeah, I think I could just make that faster, which is nice because Square, I think, is there are points where you spawn hundreds of nodes or at least dozens of nodes, which is a good stress test for our collision detection. So Yeah, like it's definitely not perfect. So I think it'd be fun to go through that and make it faster and just kind of see the progress.
Yeah, I think like more heuristic stuff just to like filter stuff out like as quickly as possible might be beneficial before we do like this really intensive process of like given like all these space like the like possible like intersectings and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that like adding to the filter will probably cut it down as well. One thing I was gonna ask is what are your thoughts on so like right now the way my game works is I have a base node and then I add in all of the NPCs to that one at a time, and I add in all of the players to that one at a time. So basically, like the base node has everything as a child.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to doing that, what if I did base node has an NPC node, basically, that all the NPC nodes go into, which is then a child of the base node, and then all the players go into a node that's a child to the base node. And then when I'm passing into the collision detecting function, I can just be like, here are the NPC nodes that I want you to detect against, or here are the player nodes that I want you to detect against. And do you think that would be like a good optimization too, or do you think that would be like a little overkill, or is that like not really how we want to like build the pattern for how home games are built?
Yeah, I think the subtree thing makes sense. I think the current interface, I haven't seen it in a while, but I'm pretty sure it's basically like give me the thing that you would be adding or the thing that you're questioning, and then the root of the stuff you want to check against, which could be your game root, which could go into every single node in your game, or it could be just the NPC thing, which is just by nature of what it is, giving me only the stuff that is an enemy or whatever that I would actually care about running into. So that might be faster or whatever. I don't really have like any strong opinions about the way to structure the interface or like the way to structure your calls to the tools or whatever. It's just like what makes sense to you, which is pretty shitty because you don't know like the actual best way. But I think having an NPC root is the right answer because you only need to check at most the number of NPCs on the screen at any time instead of all this other unnecessary shit.
Yeah, okay, that works. I can do that. I think that would be pretty easy to implement. Actually, that might work better because then into that node I can add only the hitboxes.
Yeah, or like just yeah, exactly. Like just what you need to care about. I think the way that it is basically structured to be like, hey, give me your entire game. But I think that does fall apart at some point. So it makes sense to structure your game in such a way where you have kind of common responsibilities grouped by subtrees and kind of going down and there's like a programming phrase that people use. What is it? Least concern, least responsibility. But I forget the name, but it's basically that a component should only have to care about what it has to care about. I don't have to care about what else, other stuff around me is doing. So if I structure my game in such a way where one specific subtree is kind of a category of stuff I care about and I can go beyond that, then I can provide that subtree to this collision stuff and say I'm only detecting NPCs or I'm only detecting, bushes on the side of the screen or other player characters or whatever, however you want to structure it, whatever your game is.
Yeah, because I mean, like the NPCs, I don't care if they'll never touch each other. Like by design, they don't move around in a way that allows them to touch one another. So there'll never be a collision to detect there. It's like I can just ignore them completely. Like the only piece that I really care about touching is I realized like I was totally like away from the mic and I'm looking at Audacity and I see that now. But anyway, yeah, whatever I was saying.
Yeah.
NPCs. I need to know if NPCs run into players, but only that. And I need to know if players run into NPCs or other players or the destination node. Like player detection needs to be a little bit different. So I think that you're right. That I need to build like two sets of things, really, when I'm trying to detect against. Yeah. But I guess now I'm kind of wondering how would that work because. For players, I would still need to look at the base node then because I need to look at players and NPCs and destinations. Unless I never mind. I'll play around with it. I'll play around with it.
Yeah, so in that case, I guess you would structure it so like, here's my game root. This has all of the terrain and all of the base nodes that everything else is on top of. And then I have a subtree which is basically collidables. That subtree has two subtrees, which includes NPCs and other players. Maybe one day that includes projectiles or whatever, if you wanted to add another whatever. But your collision detection would all be for collidables, the subtree. Everything I care about in relation to this player and where it moves would be under here. I checked every single node in this subtree against it. Maybe we can add some filters to make it even more optimized, because the math it's doing is pretty expensive, and it's doing it against every single thing in there, which, you know, gets more expensive as you add more stuff to the screen, which as you add more stuff to the screen, it gets significantly slower and blah, blah, blah. Algorithms, runtime complexity, fucking computer science, you know? But yeah, so that makes sense. But there are definitely improvements that we can make on the game side and on the engine side.
Yeah. So, you know, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I do think that it's the hitboxes worked really well. I like the hitbox idea. It resolves a lot of the work that I was trying to do. Like suddenly, like my collision function is like really small. Like it's basically just like call a collision thing and do a little bit of work to figure out what was colliding with what, and then, you know, send the message back. Like what kind of node was colliding, whether it was an NPC running into a player, was a player running into a player, was a player running in the destination node, like that was important. And that I wouldn't want to put into the collision detecting in the first place, since it just gets back to array of nodes. Also, I found a bug with the way that Squish's random color function works, and it's very funny. So imagine the set of books there, right? It's like, for listeners, I have books on a bookshelf. And the way we do it is, if I'm like, I want to remove the green book, and so we remove the green book, which is in the middle. We then get the length of that array, and then we get a random number. But that random number could be the position of the green book. And then in the original set of colors, we get the index given the random number that we generated. And so when I was testing it out, I was getting blue, and I was like, that should be impossible. I'm providing blue as an unused color, but just by chance, the randomness of it was still selecting the index of blue. So I think we need to change a little bit so that it's it's pulling the color from the filtered list instead of the original color list is really like the fix for it.
Didn't you add that excluded colors feature?
Yeah. But I'm gonna
blame
dude. It is my fault. That's true.
All good. No, that's
when I tested it worked.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those things where, I mean, it makes sense. I've never run into it because, like, who's to say that a random color is the wrong random color? But it's nice to catch that stuff. So,
yeah, it was a fun thing to find. So I will likely have a small PR out for that sometime soon. Nice. Not during Thanksgiving, but sometime soon. You know.
Yeah, no, I will be smoking a turkey this Thanksgiving, so I will not be looking at any code that you write.
That's good. What flavor turkey?
What flavor? You mean like what kind of wood?
I don't know. All of it.
Well, so I did a dry run on my turkey this past weekend. Because I've never made a turkey in my life, or I had never made a turkey in my life. So I had committed to smoking a turkey this year. So I did a 13-pound turkey over the weekend, which involved injecting butter into the breast because the breast is so lean and there's no fat. And then the wood I used was mostly mesquite with a little bit of apple wood, which was not the best mix, but it was basically what I had left over in the smoker, so it just was what it was. Mm-hmm. Best turkey I've ever had, I think, like homemade turkey that I've ever had. But the next one I'm going to do is going to be mostly apple wood, so I'll report back on that. But poultry needs like a lighter, more mild wood, I think, than like a super smoky hickory or like a mesquite.
I got you. That's interesting. Yeah. I didn't know how much goes into that.
I have pounds of turkey in my freezer just from the last one, and I'm about to make another 15-pound turkey on Thursday. So if you need some turkey, dude, hit me up. Please, for the love of God. Any listeners out there, if you need turkey, I'll send you my address.
Get some turkey? Does Pepper get turkey on Thanksgiving?
Pepper will get some turkey for Thanksgiving. She deserved it. She deserves it. Continues to deserve it.
Yeah. Aw, that's very sweet. Sapphire does not get turkey on Thanksgiving.
That's fine, dude. Dogs deserve dog food. I feel bad spoiling my dog.
She gets a little bit of mashed potatoes because she loves mashed potatoes.
Nice.
But no turkey.
I always get worried. I'm like, oh, is there garlic in this? I Googled once. Dogs can't eat garlic.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I make the mashed potatoes, I know that I'm not going to put garlic in there. But when we stuff the turkey, we put onion and garlic in it.
Yeah.
So that's why she doesn't get turkey. It's not like I hate my dog and she can't eat turkey. I love my dog and she can eat turkey, but she can't eat turkey that we make. So,
Yeah, I just did salt and pepper on mine. And so it should be dog ready. But anyway, for home game stuff, what I did was last episode it was just a solo one. Full disclosure, I spent 2 hours recording that episode. I had the worst burp attack I've ever had in my entire life. I recorded for 2.5 hours. Some of that felt scripted at a point because it's like you decide that you're going to say a certain phrase, and then on the 38th take of the podcast, you're like, oh, well, I just say this. I'm not even thinking about what I'm saying. I just say this. But I have 2.5 hours of recorded high resolution, like really nice microphone burps. If you ever want like the crispiest, highest resolution burps you can get, hit me up, dude.
Can we add it to the soundboard?
We could. We should not, but we could. But yeah, I started over probably seriously no less than 50 times. I did an estimate every 12 seconds on average. I was burping.
What?
And so like I would have a solid start, and then fucking burp, and then have to restart it. I think even in the one that I have, I burp during the thing, but. Yeah, man, I was stressing out. And then the stress made the burps worse. So it was like a crazy feeling. Never leave me again. I hate doing solo episodes. What the fuck, dude? Yeah.
What?
Burping.
How do you have that many burps in you?
I drank a San Pellegrino, and I'm guessing that supplied the 2 hours of burps, but I really don't know. I just have a burp thing. But it was horrible, and I was getting really frustrated. And basically the version of the podcast, I had checked out for it entirely because I was just basically reciting what my brain was telling me to say, but I wasn't like coherent or like thinking about it, you know.
You weren't actively in the moment. You were thinking about the San Pellegrino.
Yeah, and how much I regretted drinking it. But basically what I was talking about for the most part was public games, and how my goal was to have public games working kind of like Jackbox, where you can go to a website, put in a code, and play a game with someone who is playing home games already. And I got that working kind of fully. I have a service called public.homegames.link, which is responsible for all of this stuff. I originally wanted spectators, and instead... Excuse me. See, I'm burping just thinking about it. And instead of just spectators, I have full-on players, so like receiving input. We still don't have spectators as we used to have before I removed that feature, where you can kind of click drop in, drop out spectators. But that will be added at some point. But yeah, right now it's just you can play a game with a code over the public internet. So like I showed Synovia. I was like, hey, disconnect Wi-Fi on your phone, put in this code, go to this web browser, put in that code, and you can play this game with me. We were playing Sponge, which I have some update. I have something to report about Sponge over the public internet like that, but I will talk about that, I guess, later if you have any questions about the state of things or how I got that working or anything.
I think I do have some questions. So I think my first question is this an additional service, like another AWS hosted piece, or is this like leveraging some of the resources already?
Yeah, so good question. Basically what I did was I set up a new server in Northern California, or like Bay Area, California, with the intention of being this kind of publicly hosted relay server where it's responsible for serving the web client, like a publicly available web client, which then connects to a locally running on some network game server. And then it's also responsible for broadcasting game server data from a thing to a client, if that makes sense. So like my home game server is sending data to the relay server, which is then sending it out to all the clients that need it, and it's also serving the clients that consume the web server, if that makes sense. So it's kind of all in one, but yes, it is served at public.homegames.link, and it does all this stuff. So the basic idea is just like before, where if you have everything running on your Wi-Fi network, which is like the core feature of home games, someone on the same Wi-Fi network can just kind of join by going to homegames.link. All that stuff is still intact. The only change really is what used to happen was if there were no servers detected on your public network, it would give you a message and say, hey, no home game servers running. If you think you're running a server, here, send us a message here to troubleshoot or whatever. And now what it does instead of that message is it'll just redirect you to public.homegames.link, which is all that thing does is it just says, hey, it's a slightly modified version of our existing web client. And it just says, hey, what's your code? And if you put in the code, it then has an in-memory map of all the servers that are connected to it. It says, okay, this code maps to this server. Let me go ahead and act as the intermediary connection thing between you and this game server. And it goes from there. It works pretty okay. There are some problems with latency, which is what I was talking about with Sponge. But yeah, does that answer your question?
It does. I do have another question. Is there any security concern with that? Like any way for people to like get data or whatever that they're not really supposed to have? Or are we going to have data that we don't really care to have, I guess?
Yeah, so... Yeah, I kind of have two things about this. One is that, if you don't know the code, you can't like connect to a game, and that kind of security through obscurity or whatever it is, where it's like if I randomly generate enough characters, you just can't guess it at a certain point. So it's only 4 characters, and so realistically, like, you really can't access a server if you don't know those exact 4 characters. So... yeah, there's really not much data there to take, and if you could take it, then you have to kind of know information beforehand. But I think kind of the beauty of this whole system is that there's no data that's valuable. Like session data for a game that has no user information, no user tokens, nothing except the activity of a single game. And on that game server side, it's a totally opt-in thing to broadcast to this game server, which again is just broadcasting game state, totally anonymized. There's literally nothing in it that associates to you. I think it's relatively secure, and also the data that's there, like no one wants. So I think those two things combined create a pretty good scenario for us, where even if that data was publicly broadcast and just basically broadcast it on a public thing, who cares? Like, it's just maybe it's like files that you're sending back and forth between a client and a game, or a game and a client, or whatever, like audio file or whatever. But an audio file from the game is publicly accessible via the home games network and all of our asset streaming stuff, or asset serving stuff, and anything else that you're putting up is like, it's not your social security number, it's like it's just the game data. Like, so yeah, that's my answer. There's not much there to take, and what you can take is not takeable.
Yeah, you can't really do anything with just the squished game state. At that point, you're just rebuilding home games on Squish.
Yeah, I mean, what you could do is worst case scenario, you could inspect someone's game server and get the files that they're sending back and forth, which includes, like I said, if you have like voice clips or images or whatever, if you're sending photos back and forth to a game server and someone magically has the code and is spectating, they could basically do whatever they want with that data. But yeah, to me that makes sense, I guess. Like it we don't need anything else. It's like public data is public data,
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's cool. I'm really a big fan of that, and also I'm really happy that we did the home dome stuff, so that we we don't allow you to read the file server. I feel like that would be the trickier one, where it's like you could ask to get access to someone else's file server using that, or at least like access to files they have on their server.
Yeah, I think like having an automated thing that says on the happy path of a game, make sure that it's not looking at the file system. Like that's good, but I think that's why we do the human review. I think in a perfect world, it's like, okay, well this is a catalog of games that are trusted because I trust the people that run this system. And at the end of the day, when you have something that's like, hey, in this text box, put your date of birth and address that the name of your first pet or whatever, where it's like, okay, we're not going to do this because this is weird. So we can just say like, we don't trust this, we don't like this, and we don't want this we don't want this publicly viewable in our catalog or whatever. And so, we have that big warning that's like, hey, you could do whatever you want on this system, but like maybe don't trust this because we don't know what the fuck it is. It's like, I think that's the good middle ground of like just saying, like being upfront and being like, well, we vetted this or we haven't, but you're free to make your own choices.
Yeah, and that's pretty big. I do like we looked at this and we think it's good to go. So you can, as long as you trust us, then you're probably good to go. Also, everyone's game has to be open source, so you could literally just look through the code yourself. If you're like, I don't know about this one, you can figure out what it does yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing that people kind of, that's more like the don't tread on me type folks, who are like, man, fuck it, if I put the information out, it's like on you to find the information. Like if I put in my thing it's a virus, it's on you to find out it's a virus, It's like, that's true, but also it's nice to have a bit more of an authoritative thing to be like, hey, that's all true and stuff, but maybe don't download this. Or like, if we reject it, you can put it in the if we reject a game that's been submitted for approval in the download, it's just like, hey, this was rejected because, and then it's got a message that we put, and it's just like, asks for social security number. And so an end user could be like, well, shit, when it asks for that, I'll just put dummy data. I still want to see what this is about or whatever, but like, anyway, but security stuff is obviously a thing, but I think the beauty of this system is that we don't give a fuck about like what your name is. Like we don't even track it, like when you sign up for an account, we don't ask your name. We don't ask like we just don't have data that anybody would want. It's just your game.
Yeah. And you can play the public games with no account, right? Like you can just, as a casual, play it.
Yeah, like if someone is running a home game server, you can do the like play via code without everybody involved in the entire process does not need an account. One of my notes here is that when we inevitably do that local HTTPS thing where, you generate a certificate for yourself that you store on your machine. We generate a DNS record for you that we associate to your local IP. Like this whole thing, that I think would require an account, not necessarily be like paid or whatever, but just to limit the amount of people who can just make requests to this and generate these assets and stuff. Like having an account makes sense. So that's probably close to a quote premium feature, even though it would be free. But in general, no, you don't need an account to do any of this shit. So it's like we have no data to associate to you individually. The fact that you clicked on a certain layer and made it change a color in this game this one time is like literally worthless, Yeah.
Nice. I like that. I like all of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is like one of those like sidebars, but like, I guess tax filing services were using the Meta pixel tracker thingy, and that was sending their like taxpayer information through that. When I was like, that's fucked. I don't ever want to build a product that does that.
Yeah, man, it's weird. It's like I remember it was probably like 5, 6, 7 years ago at this point, but I had a coworker where I was mentioning like how weird it was that Google Maps knew or was asking for a specific piece of information. And he told me like, yeah, but what is Google going to do with that? They're really just trying to build a better product for you, and it's free. And so like, it's a win-win, like whatever. It's like, yes, but something still feels weird about it. Like the fact that you can infer a lot of things about me, like on my YouTube analytics, I always use this as an example for people who like don't care about it or whatever. But on my YouTube analytics, I can break down my viewers by income, like general annual income brackets. It's like, when did you ever tell Google how much money you make? But they know it. It's like, so if I can just find a bunch of different pieces of data about you, I can infer how much money you make. If I can figure out that you buy the new iPhone every year, and I can figure out that you live in this zip code, and I can like, you just piece these things together, and that is what you learn about me. It's like, I understand. I'm not saying it's like an inherently evil thing or bad thing, but I don't give a fuck about that. You know what I mean? Like in our stuff, it's nice to be like, I don't need to know about you, and it's because this doesn't make money. And on some level, it's like, that sucks, but I also like, I don't fucking care. You know what I mean? Like, it's such also a cool thing.
I feel like it doesn't have to make money by selling your information.
Totally.
I think if people like home games, they're probably going to be somewhat willing to be like, I'll pay you $4 or whatever a month. That's like just like a here you go kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like a Patreon style thing. But
totally. Where it's like, it's like, I don't actually care about the features that you give me. Like all the Patreons I'm subscribed to, it's not because I care about their reward tiers. It's because I just want to give them money directly because I like them. And in my head, that is the perfect internet. But I understand that that's not the world we live in or whatever, where like, you know, people don't want to pay money for anything. So that's fine. Whatever.
I mean, having disposable income is quite nice. You can spend it on things you like.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
But just the thing of like, I spend 10, 15 hours a week with this app that someone made, and I refuse to support them monetarily at all. Like that is the baseline. That is the common thing, you know, where it's like, oh, fuck that app is free or isn't free. Ugh. Like, I'm not going to download that. Ugh. Or at least a lot of people I know, you know, and it's like, okay, well, I can get mad at that, or I can just accept it for what it is, which is like, whatever, you know, like people don't want to give you money for anything that is software, because software should be free. People think, or whatever, which is like, okay, cool. Our software is free. We don't need to make money from it. But like, if we had to make money from it, I don't know what the fuck I would do, you know?
Yeah, we'd start tracking your social security number.
We would just ask you for your SSN. Yeah, when you sign up for home games.
When you're logging in, we're like, what's your social security number? And if you're not in America, what country do you live in?
Yeah, but yeah, no, that's one of the nice freedoms or whatever of this whole system is that we don't really need to care about that stuff. But yeah, public games work. I think for me, it kind of flipped my entire idea of this thing on its head, because from the beginning, it was over Wi-Fi. Has to be Wi-Fi. This is like a prerequisite for the entire system. Over Wi-Fi, play a game with somebody on your phone or your tablet or your computer. And these games are made by amateurs, you know, people like you, whatever, with like a simple game engine or whatever. But now, like, I realize that Wi-Fi stuff is more, instead of like a asset, it's like a oh, but this, you have to do this. It's like a hurdle or a burden in the process. It's not necessarily a feature. And for the regular person being like, I don't give a fuck about what network you're on. Just go to this website and put in this code and you can play this game with me. You don't need to think about how this works. You don't need to care. Which again, opposite of what I originally thought. But I think seeing, like I said earlier, where Synovia can join the game from her phone over her cell phone data, not her Wi-Fi or whatever, and play this game with me, that was like the click of like, holy shit, I could like, you know, like I could taste how close we are to getting this shit done. Where like I've mentioned so many times where it's like this eternal 10%, you know, like you're 90% of the way done, but I've got this last 10%. Oh, I've only got this and I've got this. But as you dig into it, the list never goes away. There's always a list of shit that you have to do. But yeah, when I saw Synovia join the game and we played a very low FPS version of Sponge, I was like, this is it. You know, like when we get game publishing consistently working and like reliable and all this stuff, and like people trust this system and people can use this system is fucking cool. Like, even if no one cares about it, like I can look at this thing and say, we built this, and I am genuinely, legitimately proud of it. I learned all this shit and I implemented all this shit, and we got all these different aspects of it working end to end. And like seeing it the other day, I was like, holy fuck, dude, like it is so close. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to the next 7 months or so until we launch our real version of this, like, you know, with all the polish and stuff we've been planning. But in terms of features, this was the last one, and I was super happy to get it working. Yeah, it was super fucking cool.
Yeah, nice. I'm super stoked about it. That sounds awesome. It sounds awesome.
Yeah, so one of the things I realized is, like, I'm not an infrastructure person. I'm not a DevOps person. Like, I know AWS, our stuff runs on AWS. I'm familiar with basics, you know, like EC2, ECS, Lambda, like whatever kind of stuff. But in terms of regionalizing your service, like if you think about you know, even in Gears of War or Call of Duty or whatever, it'll be like, hey, here's the server that you're talking to. It'll likely be like US West, US Central, US East, EU, whatever, which generally correspond to like popular data service provider, whatever, like regions like Amazon or whoever. But so our relay server right now is only in Northern California. So like when I play a game on home games and I'm running a public server, my computer is piping data out to the Bay Area, which is pretty fucking far from Tucson, and making that available to another client that is, you know, receiving data from that server. So it's far. And so Sponge, which is a, you know, pretty fast-paced game, ran kind of like shit. You know, I would say pretty unplayable. Not totally unplayable, not like this is awful or whatever, but to be competitive in a game of Sponge or Pong, you know, it wouldn't be realistic. It's not there. So my thinking was, okay, well, in the future, say even if we were on the East Coast, right? Like if someone in fucking Boston tried to connect to this game, how would that look? It would be significantly worse for them because they're so much further. They would be receiving like a significant delay on all of the game data they receive. And so I was thinking, okay, well, the next step of this infrastructure stuff would be, instead of me directing or directly connecting to a Northern California server, it would be me connecting to kind of one centralized server, which then has a kind of subdirectory where I say, hey, I have code ABCD. My friend is hosting this. I have this code, whatever. The game server or the game server is broadcasting to its nearest available data center, which it would figure out by just pinging, right? Get the quickest ping time. Which one can I talk to the fastest? This one is it. I'm going to broadcast my data to that. And so then that kind of that entry gets stored as a subdirectory in this kind of main system, which then directs to different regions, right? So someone says this code, I know you want to talk to Northern California, or this code you want to talk to Boston, or this code you want to talk to whatever. So in the future, when we have 10 plus people or whatever using this thing, then that I think needs to become more of a thing, because the public games are really more of a proof of concept right now. But yeah, it is possible to make it better. And yeah, it's fucking difficult. Like having regions in like a real service behind it would be difficult, but as a thing right now that just works, even if it works pretty poorly, it works. And that's been one of the big things about this whole project, which I've mentioned before, but just being able to separate what we need and what we don't, and what is required for a feature versus what is nice to have.
Yeah, nice. I mean, all that makes sense, and I think that's really cool. I think learning how to regionalize is gonna be pretty fun. Yeah. Maybe you will become a DevOps person after all of this.
I don't want to. I just want to learn more about it. Like I don't like how, you know, it seems like the computer or the software industry moves such a crazy way, where like the front end world changes so fast with frameworks, and I don't give a fuck about most of them. I don't care about like the discussion about frameworks in the front end. Like, it's not interesting to me. In the DevOps stuff, it's like, oh, well, like Kubernetes is the thing. And then it's like, oh, well, this new, like federated authentication protocol is the thing. And it's like, well, I don't know much about that either. And it's like, I'm such a generalist that I don't really follow along with trends in any space. But forcing myself to do infrastructure stuff makes me think like, okay, like what's current? Like what's the modern way to do this? Because I could get a server standing up, accepting requests and giving responses, but like, what is the right way to do this? So it's nice for me to learn because I really have no like reason to, you know?
Yeah.
So
it's funny because backend seems to be the slowest moving of the three.
Yeah.
Where it is like when you're not talking about like the infrastructure, but the actual like frameworks and stuff at the back end, I feel like they move much slower because they're just like their contracts are much more static with what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's like if you want an API that gives you data from a database, like I don't need to think about that. That shit's been the same forever. If you want me to, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's slow, which is why I do mostly backend stuff. It's like I do what I do and I don't care about what's fancy. You know, it's very mindset.
I'm big. I in my head, back-end work is engineering for engineers, where it's like other engineers need what you do, but other people don't care what you do.
Like, to me, that's DevOps, dude. Like having
that's true.
Having a server that you can make requests to and get responses from is such a. You could take it for granted, you know, but it's like having a real publicly accessible web server. So fucking nice. DevOps.
That is true. DevOps is pure math in terms of like everything. All of math relies on pure math, and then back-end engineering is just regular math, and then front-end engineering is where the PMs are like, I need you to make this feature, and the front-end engineer is like, I'm gonna need you to make this thing for me on the back end. You're just like, yes.
It's like a weird hierarchy when you break it down. But yeah, I mean, it's nice just learning about shit, and there's like still work to be done. Like I said, with spectators and getting that feature back to where it used to be. But in terms of my goal of by Thanksgiving have public spectators working with the code, I think I kind of surpassed it and didn't quite meet it because again, I don't have spectators, but I have everything else and I have it working in a pretty reliable way. And like I said, it's slow for something like Sponge, but it would probably be totally serviceable for something like I don't know, basically any of the card type games that we have where it involves like entering text, kind of a more asynchronous form of gameplay as opposed to this like active, I'm going to hit the ball that you just smacked at me type of thing. Which, you know, I don't think people playing these casual party games are not just like, wow, I can see that's 30 FPS. You know, this is bullshit. Like this isn't Halo, you know, like no, like in my head, because games are so like, I'm comparing it to games I've played and what I want from games, but 60 FPS over a public WebSocket in a whole other state, like is not reasonable. And I don't think it's necessary. Like when I really am honest with myself. So again, maybe one day we have like WebRTC or some sort of fanciness and we can be like super fast and impressive. Maybe we start with getting this game engine doing 60 FPS offline, and then we could try to do it 60 FPS over a network, the way that Home Games runs and whatever. But yeah, whatever. The 60 FPS dream, I have accepted that that's kind of a dream.
I think that's fair. Yeah. I do. Sorry, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I have two things, but they're not really related to the public game stuff, so you can go if you have something.
Oh, no, mine weren't related to the public game stuff either. So you go ahead.
Well, okay. Well, I have a little bit of a eating crow moment or whatever they would call that, but basically I've been using Sublime Text over the past week writing some shit for all this stuff I've been doing. And I really don't like that I can't command click into stuff because I've been getting used to command clicking stuff at work because we use TypeScript at work. And then I was like, fuck, it'd be nice if I had some kind of like smart linking in my IDE and maybe some like hover over and see the arguments I'm supposed to pass to this. And like, fuck, Yazeed was right. We should use TypeScript. But then I was like, man, fuck you, Yazeed. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing. And then
Yeah,
I came back around.
kind of
And
where I started this to go.
so basically, I think we have I've mentioned before, but we have an ESLint config. So for linting in our code, we do have a standard rule set there that we can use to run before we commit code, but I don't have it integrated with my IDE or any of that kind of stuff. So like it doesn't auto format when I save. It doesn't like show me inline style errors or anything like that. So basically I'm at the point where I see it being feature complete, or we have everything we need, and we're just trying to make it better. And at this point in development, I think TypeScript and having like better IDE integration with like our kind of standards as a organization, whatever that means, I think that becomes more valuable because we're focused more on quality instead of getting just like a thing working. Yeah. So I'm saying you were right, but fuck you at the same time, dude.
It is what it is, I take my W's where I can find them, man. Yeah, I do like that. I also would point out that working on a different project at work, but they have a VS Code. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting, like a workspace file, basically, that when you bring it up, it's like, here are all of the things that you want to download. Like it'll set up your VS Code workspace for you, so you don't even have to think about it as an engineer, which is quite helpful when I was setting up their thing. I don't know if you can do that for Sublime, Emacs, Vim, those kinds of things, but having something like that would be probably pretty nice for people as they come on board. But yeah, I agree with you that's like, I think that piece specifically is like way, way, way later down the line. Like when we have static, like this is the VS Code that you want to use, like here's some extensions that we think you want to use in VS Code, like that'll probably be that, you know what I mean?
But see, that's the kind of the thing I hate, where it's like, and this is a double-sided thing. Like when I start writing Java, I'm thinking about Java. I'm not thinking about the JVM or compiled bytecode or how it's actually running on the machine. Those are all abstracted for me, and I don't have to think about it, and it's very nice. But at the same time, I really don't like the idea of this just happens, and I, as a developer, don't need to think about it. Because I don't like the fact that I don't need to think about the JVM and the bytecode and how it really runs, because at the end of the day, there is a whole, like, the thickness of the gunk between me and the truest running version of my code, what is really happening, it gets more and more as that magic comes in. And as a, at this point I've been a professional software developer since I was like 20 or whatever, which makes me think I kind of know a little bit about what I don't like. And what I don't like more than anything is that magic, is that I don't understand how this is working, but it works, type of thing. So that was always my thing of TypeScript, where it's like I'm adding this layer of corporate maintained bullshit in between me and this real language, and it's transpiling into something else that is the real language, but I didn't write that. Like the whatever word, like preservationist or whatever the fuck old person thing in me was like, no, but I accept that it is necessary. And to be fair, I always said I knew it would be necessary at some point, but I have to say when that is, because I'm an asshole, so
That's fair. Yeah. I'm glad you liked working with TypeScript. I think it's pretty dope.
To be fair, I don't like TypeScript. I don't like types. I don't like types in JavaScript. I don't like typing inputs to functions. I don't like that shit. But the simple layer of smarts that it puts over your function names and just being able to see what calls this function without having to search the text and like figure out manually what is actually calling the function, that's the value to me. Actually having types of stuff, I think is like totally unnecessary bullshit that just makes the development process slower. But
Dog, hard agree. I hate typed languages. I hate typed languages.
Yeah.
Give me an untyped language, a weak typed language any day of the week, dude. Strong typing is for the birds.
And I love Java. Like, I spend most of my day to day, real life writing Java. I love Java. Strongly typed. Won't compile if you have fucked up types, whatever.
I'm so sorry.
But I love Java. But again, when I write JavaScript, I'm not thinking like I think in Java. So yeah, man, like, fuck a type, whatever. If it breaks, it breaks. Let me go. Let me go. You know, that's my thing. My number one thing is, like, let me build something as fast as possible. Which again is why I'm thinking the shit's built. Like, I'm looking at this and I'm like so fucking happy with it that it works. But I know that there's a gap between what it is and what it should be. And for this gap here, developer tools are what's helpful to us. Yeah.
I agree.
That's all I had. So what were you going to say before I started talking about TypeScript?
Now,
it's going to be bullshit, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think you'll like it. How do you feel about writing a GitHub issue for what you're working on, so that we both have visibility on what the other person's working on?
Yeah, that's fine. I've been wanting to do that forever. It's just like it's like a thing to. It's a thing I have to get my head out of it, but it's like if it's not directly related to a feature, I don't fucking care. But like I said, I'm trying to get my head out of that, because I understand that you will always be in that phase if you're always thinking like that, you know, if it's always just features and features. So for a time I signed up, I think I still have the account, but for a tool called Linear. If you go to linear.app, it's like a product management or project management tool, where you can have like priorities and different, you know, like, this is in progress, this is in review, this is whatever, which I liked quite a bit. So to me, I think that's better than GitHub issues, but just for like a simple, you know, because I never think about Linear. So just as a simple, like, I'm working on code. What is that code related to? I should have an issue before I submit the code for pull request. I should always have a issue related to the pull request I put up. So yeah, that's solid. I should do that. For the pull request I put up for public games, I will make a public games issue with like a little bit of context about what it is.
Nice. Yeah, the reason that came up because the other side project that I started working on, I spun up issues for everything, and then I had milestones and labels, and I was like, this is much easier for me to keep up with than in home games, because in home games I basically have to wait until I ask Joseph what he's doing every week or every other week.
Yeah, home games exist in the mind of a madman, so you have to just like see what kind of insight you can get into that mind of a madman. Whereas like a self-directed project is like, I have these goals, I'm gonna do these goals by myself.
Yeah. So that would be nice. I think like an issue and then milestone. I think the milestone would be kind of cool too, because like as you make issues, you like the milestone like goes away, and then as you close issues, it like comes back together, and then so like we could like slowly see that like gap closing as we get to like launch day.
Yeah.
Which would be kind of cool. Also, like if you attach it to PRs, when the PR will also push it away and close it back in again. So that's pretty nice. And then we can also have labels, be like Square label for my stuff, and then, you know, Sponge label for Sponge.
I will do issues, but fuck a label, dude. That's too much process for me. Metadata on the metadata, that's bullshit.
So no milestone, no label.
No, fuck that. Issue. That's the farthest I'll go.
I'm gonna make a PM out of you yet, damn it. See, or I'm gonna be the PM.
See, that's the thing, is like, I know in my real career that I can't be a individual contributor. Like, I can't just be writing code most of the week like I do now. Like I can't be doing this when I'm 50. Like, I know in my path at some point is management, if not people management, but like product management.
God.
But I fucking hate it so much, the idea of it. So like, I'm just trying to push back as hard as possible.
I like process.
I hate process.
I like having insight into what's going on, and I feel like issues and labels and milestones is enough for me. We use a tool. I think it's open, and I don't think it costs any money. It's ZenHub. It does something similar, like in your GitHub UI. It's like a Chrome extension or browser extension or whatever. But it's just like a way of like adding lanes and stuff like that to it, and like that is helpful because I'm on a bigger team and there's like people and I need insight into what's going on and where issues are at. But at least for you and me, I think like an issue plus a PR and maybe a label and like a milestone, like launch milestone would be kind of nice. And then we can, have some like pre-planned stuff of like, okay, so like Joseph wants to do these things. Yazeed wants to do these things.
How about this? So because it's Thanksgiving in a couple days, I will likely not be doing a whole bunch of hardcore work on home games over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so I'm at this point where public games are almost there. And so for the next episode, 2 weeks from now, I will have the pull request up for the public game stuff. And I will have gone through and kind of enumerated the major points that I want to clean up. Like, for example, controller support or public games performance or general oomph of the user interface. Like, if you look at if you look at a Jackbox game, it's not active. It's not high speed, kind of intense motion, but the screen is always happening. Like, there's always something moving. There's always something drawing your attention. There's background music, there's a voice, there's animation, there's something very subtle but keeps you engaged, even though there's nothing happening. So that's what I call oomph to the UI. Our user interface looks very static. It looks like you're looking at a corpse of components when you're staring at like anything happening on screen. It just looks dead. So yeah, that would be a general goal of like oomph, right? This very wishy-washy, vibey type thing that you and I understand, and then we can commit pull requests that are related to the oomph or something like that. But yeah, like general goals I want to have knocked out before we do our full launch, things that are at a high level important, and then kind of breaking down in between. But the high level stuff I want to have done before the next episode. Basically like the checklist before launch.
Hey, nice. Thank you.
Yeah, you fucking nerd, project manager nerd. What do you like? What do you like thinking and planning? You fucking dweeb. That's fine. Makes sense.
We have like way more process at work than I ever thought I would have in my life, and I actually like it, and I've actually advocated for some of it, and I'm like, who am I? I've changed since the old days where I didn't believe in managers at all.
Yeah, just burn down all the management. Used to be the thing where it's like, what do we need anybody for except for me? But now it's like, okay, wait, hold on.
Now I'm like, it's kind of nice knowing what my coworkers are doing. It's kind of nice, like, knowing what's going to come down the next sprint, I'll add my 2 cents a week ahead of time so we get to it. Everyone could have read it and known that I thought about this and, like, what I thought about this.
Yeah, it's nice when it stays consistent, but having process when like you're not ready for it is the fucking worst.
Oh yeah, that's true too. I luckily on the projects that I'm working on now, it's like we're ready for that kind of process.
Yeah.
Where previous projects that I'd worked on, no process there would have been a death knell. No one would have gotten anything done.
Yeah.
And actually, to be fair, there was process there, but everyone ignored it, and it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is like top-down process. It's like I've talked about before, but I really hate best practices. Like I really hate when someone just comes in and says, "This is the way to do the thing. Apply it to the group." It's like the group should have a way that they work, and then that creates the process. Like, fuck your process and fuck you.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I what I like about the process that we've been coming up with has been like, here's the problem. What do we want to do to fix the problem? Yeah. It's like no one knows what anyone's doing. Okay, so like let's add process so that people know what everyone's doing. Right. We don't know what's happening next sprint. Okay, well let's add process to like make sure people know what's happening next sprint.
Right. It's based on need, not like some nebulous like, oh, well, someone told me this was right.
yeah, in the Scrum handbook, you're supposed to have your ceremonies at 4:00 in the morning every day. It's like, who cares?
Sheeple mentality, dude.
Stand-up. Yeah, so we have my stand-up where I tell fart jokes or whatever, and we move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if we ever make this a real company, dude, I'll make you the head product guy, and we'll have 5 minutes of fart joke time a day.
I've never told a fart joke in my whole life.
Yeah, that's not your vibe.
It's not.
I was gonna say your life is a fart joke, but that felt harsh for like.
That's really brutal. Oh my god. What the hell? First you call me ugly in a swimming pool, and now you tell me my life's a fart joke?
I was gonna say your life is a fart joke, dude. I'm protected. I didn't say anything.
I was gonna rob your house, but then I decided that, you know what? I don't really feel like it.
Hey, man. My house is unrobbed. It's all good.
House unrobbed. True. Honestly, that's the number one concern.
All right. Well, that's all I had.
I don't have anything else. Me neither. I'm good to go.
Okay. Well, then in that case, thank you everybody for listening. As always, our music was done by our friend Tynan. He is Nightan on Bandcamp. That is Nightan, Nytan. You can find us on Twitter at homegames.io. We have a website, homegames.io. Happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate Thanksgiving. If not, happy whatever day it is.
Thursday.
Happy Thursday and rest of time. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate your presence and being alive. Thank you for doing all that. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.